He had spent a decade perfecting the art of creating weddings for others. Lavender arches, vintage lace, vows whispered under autumn light. Each ceremony he crafted was a love letter written for people who believed they deserved to be celebrated. But the only wedding he ever truly wanted, the one he dreamed of since the night Ethan first touched his hand, was quietly buried beneath silence, shame, and the weight of a father's disapproval. Liam was a wedding planner. A good one, Subhanu. The kind who remembered that the bride liked gardenias more than lilies, or that the groom's late grandmother always said lemon cake was lucky. But 8 years ago, he wasn't designing for strangers. He was designing for himself and Ethan, his partner, his future. They had picked a lakeside venue in Vermont, just before the leaves would turn gold. Lavender accents, vintage Edison bulbs strung across birch trees, and a string quartet to play unchained melody as they danced for the first time as husbands. It wasn't extravagant, just intentional, just theirs. Liam paid for everything, quietly. He didn't ask his family for help. He knew better. The night he brought the invitation home, his father opened it, stared for a beat too long, then set it down without a word. Moments later, Liam heard the sound of glass shattering. It was the framed photo of him and Ethan from graduation day, smashed in the hallway. His mother stood in the kitchen, washing dishes she had already cleaned. "You can do whatever you want with your life," his father said, his voice low but firm. "But don't expect me to pretend this performance is real." Ethan waited outside. He never set foot in Liam's family home again. The wedding was called off a week later. Ethan left behind a single note tucked inside the box of invitation proofs. It read, "I would have married you even if it was only inside your design." Liam folded the original sketch of their wedding and placed it in the back of his drawer. He didn't speak about it again, not to his parents, not to his friends, not even to himself. But that dream, lavender arches, the hush before music, two men dancing like they weren't being watched, never really left. It just sat quietly in the corner of his mind, collecting dust like a forgotten heirloom. Years passed. Clients came and went. Liam returned to being the artist of other people's joy. But sometimes, when he walked down a reception hall alone, just before the doors opened, he'd close his eyes for a second too long. He'd imagine the soft touch of Ethan's fingers in his, and how it might have felt to be celebrated, not tolerated. He never stood at the altar, but he never forgot what it meant to want to. This was before the call came, before his father asked him after all these years to plan a wedding again. But not for him, for his younger brother, and without knowing it, to bring back everything that Liam had buried. If you've ever had to watch someone else live the version of happiness you were denied, if you've ever held your breath through applause meant for others, you're not alone. We tell these stories not just to remember, but to reclaim. This is Heart Stories, and we're just getting started. The phone call came on a gray Thursday afternoon, the kind of day when everything feels faded. Liam almost didn't answer. The name flashing on the screen was one he hadn't seen in years. Dad. Not father, not home, just Dad. Like nothing had ever been broken. His father didn't waste time on pleasantries. "We need your help," he said. "Noah's getting married. It's going to be a big wedding. You're a professional. Help your brother out." There was no acknowledgement of the past, no apology for what was taken from him, just an assumption that Liam would step into the role he'd been given, not the one he was denied. Liam said nothing at first. He didn't agree. He didn't refuse. He just listened to the voice that once told him love had conditions. That family was only family when it looked the way it was supposed to. Later that night, an email arrived from Noah, his younger brother. Subject: wedding ideas, think you'll love this. Inside were pages of notes, screenshots, inspiration boards. But it wasn't the enthusiasm that shook Liam, it was the content. Lavender florals, Edison lights across birch trees, a string quartet playing unchained melody. Every single detail was from the wedding Liam had designed for himself and Ethan 8 years ago. His hands trembled as he scrolled. There was no way this was a coincidence. At the bottom, Noah had written, "Your old sketch from way back really stuck with me. I hope that's okay." Liam stared at that line for a long time. Hope that's okay. It wasn't, but he didn't say it. Instead, he went to his closet, opened the drawer where he had hidden the sketch, and looked at it again for the first time in years. The folds were sharp. The ink hadn't faded. It still smelled faintly of Ethan's cologne, from the night they drank wine on the floor and planned their future out loud. Liam printed out Noah's email and laid it beside the original sketch. Identical. Noah had remembered everything, or worse, had taken everything. A week later, Liam arrived at his parents' house for a planning meeting. His father didn't greet him at the door. He simply called out from the dining room. "He's in here." "No, thanks for coming. No, good to see you." Just the dry efficiency of a man who thought roles should be played and feelings kept in check. As Liam entered, Noah stood up with a nervous smile. "This is going to be so good," he said. "You're the best, Liam. Always were." Liam sat across the table, slowly unrolling the sketch he'd brought with him. His fingers moved carefully, deliberately, as if touching something sacred. He laid it flat. Noah's eyes widened. Then he looked away. Liam didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He simply said, "This is the wedding I planned for myself." Before Dad said it wasn't real, the room fell into silence. Their father said nothing, just cleared his throat and turned a page in his planner. Noah looked like he wanted to say something, anything, but didn't. And so Liam did what he had done for years. He played the part. He took the notes. He asked the questions. He booked the vendors. He stitched his own heartbreak into centerpieces and seat charts, because that's what he was to them, just a wedding planner. The days that followed were measured in floral samples, fabric swatches, and appointment reminders. Liam moved through each task like muscle memory. He was efficient, professional, detached, or at least he tried to be. Every vendor he called greeted him warmly. They knew his name. He had built his reputation on precision and grace. None of them knew that the blueprint they were following wasn't just a design. It was the memory of a life that never happened. Each meeting chipped away at him. A tasting menu that matched the one he created with Ethan, down to the lemon-glazed sea bass. The same chairs with lavender sashes. Even the dessert table was identical, raspberry tartlets, shaped like little hearts. The pastry chef smiled and said, "I still remember when you first pitched this idea." Liam, glad to see it finally happening. He didn't correct her. He just nodded and said, "Yeah, finally." At night, Liam returned to an apartment that felt colder than usual. The framed awards on his wall seemed hollow, the sketches on his desk unfinished. The silence was no longer peaceful. It had a weight to it, the kind of silence that follows something sacred being stolen. One evening, while organizing digital assets for the wedding slideshow, Liam stumbled upon a folder labeled Reference. He clicked it, expecting images of flower arrangements or mood boards, but instead he found scanned copies of the original wedding plans. His wedding plans. The same sketches, font choices, and handwritten notes he had tucked away in his drawer years ago. They were scanned with care filed and renamed. He didn't remember sharing them. Then he saw the file info. Last modified 3 months ago, by Noah. That night, Liam sat alone in the dark, the glow of the computer screen lighting his face. For the first time in years, he let himself cry. Not because he was angry, but because the grief had become too quiet, too ignored, too accepted. He had spent so long pretending it didn't matter, that it was just a wedding, that it was fine to let it go. But it wasn't fine, because this wasn't just someone else's wedding, it was his dream, dressed in someone else's name. The next day, Liam visited his parents' house to finalize logistics. As he walked in, he heard Noah and their father talking in the kitchen. "I still don't get why he's being so weird," Noah was saying. "He's had years to move on. It's just a wedding." Their father replied, "He should be grateful he's even included. At least he gets to do what he's good at." Liam didn't walk in right away. He stood quietly in the hallway, just beyond their sight. holding a box of samples that suddenly felt unbearably heavy. That night, he returned home and opened the drawer one last time. He took out the original invitation white cardstock, silver foil, a lavender ribbon. It was beautiful. It still was. He placed it on his desk and whispered into the room, "It wasn't just a wedding. It was mine." No one heard him. But for the first time, he finally heard himself. The night before the wedding, Liam couldn't sleep. Not because there were details left to check. He had checked them all, twice. Everything was ready. The venue was set. The cake was delivered. The string quartet had rehearsed. But his heart felt unfinished. He wandered through the venue alone. Long after the staff had left, candles stood unlit. The air held the scent of fresh-cut lavender. Under the soft hum of exit signs, Liam traced his fingers along the edges of the banquet table, the one where his father would sit. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a letter. Not long, not bitter, just honest. It read, 8 years ago, I designed a wedding for two people who loved each other. It wasn't lavish, just sincere, just ours. I was told that kind of love didn't deserve a celebration, that it was better kept quiet, that I was embarrassing this family. So I kept it quiet. And now I see every detail of that day recreated for someone else. For your real son, for the version of family you approve of. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know this table, this music, this light. It was mine once. And I still remember what it felt like to be told I didn't deserve it. Liam sealed the envelope and placed it on the head table, just above the name card marked Father of the Groom. He didn't expect anyone to read it. Not really, but he needed it to exist. Somewhere, somehow. The next day, the wedding unfolded like a dream, just not his. Guests arrived in pastel linen and summer dresses. Laughter floated through the air like confetti. Noah looked nervous but happy. Their father stood tall, proud, telling stories and shaking hands. Liam stood behind the scenes, adjusting tablecloths, calming the florist, checking the microphone. Always useful, never seen. As the ceremony began, Liam took a seat in the back. From that distance, the vows sounded muffled. The string quartet played unchained melody, just like in the plan. No one seemed to notice how tightly Liam's hands gripped the program in his lap. During the reception, a slideshow played across the ballroom's grand screen, a timeline of Noah's life. Childhood photos, college days, travels. Then, for only a few seconds, an unfamiliar image appeared, a wedding sketch. It was Liam's, the same one he had folded and hidden for nearly a decade. The same design with Ethan's initials faintly penciled in. Someone had scanned it, someone had added it, and as it appeared, a quiet gasp rippled through a few tables. The image vanished as quickly as it came. No one commented, no one explained. Liam looked around, searching faces. He caught Noah's eye across the room. Noah didn't smile. He didn't flinch. He just gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, but it was there. And then Liam saw Ethan. He was seated near the back, beside an old family friend. He looked older, calmer. Their eyes met, just for a moment, long enough to feel everything, too short to say anything. Ethan stood and quietly left. No words, no scenes, just a silent exit. Later that night, Liam returned to the table to gather place cards and candle holders. The envelope he had left was gone. In its place, a napkin had been folded over, with handwriting scribbled on the underside. It said, "I should have let you finish your vows." There was no signature. But Liam recognized the handwriting. It wasn't Noah's, and it wasn't Ethan's. The morning after the wedding, the world outside Liam's window was unusually quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a storm, not destruction, but stillness. A space where something old had ended and something unspoken had begun. He sat at his desk, the napkin from the night before folded carefully beside him. The handwriting had been unmistakable. his father's. The man who once called his love a performance, who once shattered glass to silence a son, had written a single line of regret. No grand apology, no dramatic scene, just a sentence that arrived too late, but not without weight. Liam didn't cry. He didn't smile either. But for the first time in years, he let himself breathe without bracing. That afternoon, Noah showed up at his door holding an envelope and a small framed photo. He didn't ask to come in. He just held the items out. "I scanned your sketch months ago," he said. "I didn't mean to steal it. I didn't know how to ask permission. I just couldn't imagine a more beautiful wedding. And I guess I hoped that maybe seeing it come to life might help you let it go." Liam took the frame. Inside was the image from the slideshow, the wedding layout in his original handwriting. Beneath it, Noah had written, "Designed by Liam, dreamed by Ethan, lived by all of us." Inside the envelope was a photo, not from the wedding but from years before. Liam and Ethan, standing side by side, arms over shoulders, mid-laugh. Someone must have taken it during a family barbecue before everything went silent. On the back, another note, this one from Ethan, dated weeks before the wedding. "I'm coming to the ceremony, not to cause trouble, just to see the dream. Maybe it wasn't ours anymore, but it started with us. And I want you to see it through. Are we sure? I'll leave before the dancing starts." He had kept his word. That evening, Liam opened the drawer one last time. He pulled out the original invitation white cardstock, lavender ribbon, the name he never got to print beside his own. He didn't cry. He just held it, like a friend he was finally ready to say goodbye to. He placed it inside a new folder, along with the napkin, the sketch, and the photo. On the cover, he wrote, "Not a wedding, a beginning." Then he stood, walked to his bookshelf, cleared a spot, and set the folder beside his professional portfolios, not hidden anymore, not buried in drawers, but displayed among the stories he had told for others. This one, finally, was his. He never stood at the altar, but he had reclaimed every step that led there. Have you ever watched someone else live the life you once dreamed for yourself? If so, did it break you or did it wake you up? We share stories like these not to reopen old wounds, but to remind you that your story, your version, still matters. This is Heart Stories. If this touched something in you, leave a thought below or share it with someone who needs to be seen, because healing begins when silence ends.